Welcome again to East Main Street Church of Christ, our live streaming of our study of the book of Genesis. We are right now concluding up on chapter number 27, and we'll be beginning in verse 24. Just as a real quick recap, very quick, just reminds you that Jacob and his mother Rebekah's plan is now in the middle of action. Jacob is in front of his father. His father thinks it's Esau that he's speaking to. The only deceptive part that they did not and were not able to disguise was Jacob's voice. And at one point in time, Isaac even made the comment that it didn't sound like it was Jacob. It didn't sound like it was Esau. It sounded like Jacob. But because of all the other deceptive things that they have done so far, the plot is working. So let's pick up with verses 24 through 26 of chapter 27. Now this is going to be Isaac speaking to Jacob. And he said, "Art thou my very son Esau?" And he said, "I am." And he said, "Bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee." And he brought it near to him, and he did eat. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Verse 26, "And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near me, and kiss me, my son." So another downright lie is told when he asked if it was Esau, and he said, "Yes, that's who I am." The next test came, and that's the eating of the food that he thought was venison. And he ate it, and he said he both ate and he drank wine. The kiss accomplished another level of satisfaction for Isaac. Two things it did. Not only was he able to feel of the back of his neck and his hands, but he also smelled, and he had that odor like Esau. So the kiss, it's interesting that this kiss applies for the first time as a sign of deep emotion in the Bible. So let's talk about all the different deceptive things that have taken place. Lies and more lies is the best way I knew how to theme this particular slide. First he said, "I am your firstborn." He said, "I am Esau, your firstborn." He stated he was bringing the meat that Isaac had requested from him. "Jehovah thy God gave me good speed." That's what he said when asked, how did you get the meat back so fast? Here's your nonverbal. He wore Esau's clothes for the smell that was needed, and he wore goat hair on his neck and hands. And the food preparation to add to the trickery worked. So those are the things that we see that were deceptive in this case. I want to take just a minute to warn us about something, however. This was God's plan all along, that Jacob would have the birthright. We see the very character of Esau early on. We read about it in the New Testament. So before we are really critical about what Jacob and his mother were doing, let's bear in mind that the deception was really taking place early on by Isaac and by his son Esau. I don't know for certain, but I don't believe we ever find recorded that the conversation was had between Isaac and Rebekah, that the angel told her that the older would be a servant to the younger. But don't we have to probably assume that that would be the case, that she would have told her husband that? I can't imagine it not being a conversation that they had. So if she had done so, at this point she knows, or he knows, that he's going against and violating what this angel of the Lord had told her back while she was pregnant with the twins when they were still in her womb. Let's read verses 27 through 29. And this is, again, now Jacob, speaking of him, "And he came near, and he kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment, and he blessed him, and he said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field, which the Lord hath blessed. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. You know, if this was a statement from a father where no deception had occurred, it would be beautiful. If he were not stating this to who he thought was his son Esau, who was already married to pagan wives, and he'd already done so many things that would be contrary to what Isaac knew God would want him to do, this would be considered beautiful. Notice that it says, and all nations shall bow down to thee. This did happen. All of the 32 kingdoms of Canaan were conquered, subdued, and driven out of Palestine by the posterity of Jacob. So the prediction that was made, the blessing that was given, actually did take place. We all have heard of a man by the name of Marshall Keeble. He was a great gospel preacher. They say he probably baptized as many or more souls than anybody we could ever imagine. I find this to be interesting what Brother Keeble said. And although we can take humor in it, there's a lot to be said for this statement. And here's what he said. I want to warn you all about going with your feelings, as many religions are saying today. If Isaac had stuck to hearing and ignored his feelings, he wouldn't have been deceived. Again, a humorous statement, but very true and on point. He heard the voice of Jacob, even though it was Esau. He heard the voice of Jacob being deceptive, acting as if he were Esau. So I felt like that was kind of an interesting statement that Brother Keeble made so many years ago. Verses 30 through 32. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac, his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He had also made savory meat, and he brought it unto his father, and had said unto his father, Let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac his father said unto him, Who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. Well, this is what we could all call the uh-oh moment. Jacob and Rebekah, they knew it was coming. They had to have probably spoken about it. Jacob actually worried about the curse that might take place. Some of you that might be a little older might remember Gomer Pyle and surprise, 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 what he used to tell the sergeant. There was definitely a surprise here, but it wasn't a funny ha-ha surprise, was it? Let's read verses 33 through 35. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, Who? Where is he that hath taken venison and brought it to me? And I have eaten of all before thou camest, and have blessed him. Yea, and he shall be blessed. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry, and said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. And he said, Thy brother came with subtlety, and hath taken away thy blessing. Isaac's body trembled because of his anger, his frustration, his fear, his anxiety. He was of course, very upset that the deception had taken place. It says here that Esau cried a great and a bitter cry. Was he accepting any blame himself? He's the one that sold the pottage many years ago, sold his birthright for a bowl of pottage many years ago. Obviously, he's not accepting that responsibility. In verse 35, Isaac actually accuses Jacob of being sly and cunning when he used the word guile in verse 35. What a sad occasion. We see a father now who knows he's been tricked by a son who is loved mainly by his mother. Verse 36. And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he hath supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. And he said, hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? I want you to note something. He wants to play the blame game, Esau does. It's like, poor old me. My brother, now he's double-crossed me twice. First of all, he took away my birthright back when I was hungry and was starved to death. And now he's taking away my blessing. But in reality, let's all understand one thing. These are one and the same. This is a play on words that Esau is trying to use. This is what he sold. He sold both. Again, the words can be used interchangeably. The birthright and blessing. He's now trying to convince Isaac, though, that they're two separate issues, and they're not. It's a shame and it's wicked for Esau to consider that the birthright didn't also convey all the patriarchal blessings that went with it. And there's no doubt in our minds probably that he did know that, but he was trying his best to earn back a portion of what he had sold to his brother. Verses 37 through 40. And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants. And with corn and wine have I sustained him. And what shall I do now unto thee, my son? And Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice, and he wept. Verse 39. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Lots of interesting things that are stated in these verses. First of all, this is a true scene. We have the father who truly loved his oldest son, even through all the worldly way he was behaving himself, and he desired earnestly that he would have the birthright. That's why he sent him out for venison, and that's why he said, come back, and at that point I'm going to bless you. And the son who's now crying bitterly because he knows he's not going to receive it. He's basically saying, I'm speaking of Isaac. Here's what Isaac's saying. It's too late now for me to do anything about it. It's done. And verse 37 really spells it out when he says, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given him for servants. The hardest question to ask for Isaac and to hear for Esau was this. Can you imagine the father looking at the son that he loved, and he says this, what then shall I do for thee, my son? I've already blessed your brother. The blessing of Esau did allow one hope that on occasions Edom would be able to throw off the oak of Israel. One example of this, unfortunately, would be the Herod the Great, who was a descendant of Esau, and he was ruling Israel ruthlessly in the days of Christ. Let's read verses 41 through 45. 41 through 45. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah. And she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said unto him, behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise, flee to Laban, my brother, to Haran, and tarry with him a few days, until thy brother's fury turns away. Until thy brother's anger turn away from thee, and he forget that which thou hast done to him, then I will send and fetch thee from thence. Why should I be deprived also of you both in one day? Have you ever known someone that has been so bitterly hurt by someone that they live for one reason, and that is to revenge whatever was done to them? This seemed at this point to be the only purpose that he had of living, was to be able to pay back what his brother had done to him. It was a custom, however, during that time, that when a father passed away, that both sons, or the sons, would always unite in the burial of their father. And bear in mind that Isaac had mentioned to Esau that he felt like his days were getting numbered. Esau probably remembered that conversation, and in his mind, he probably didn't realize that his father was going to live 40 more years. So he felt like in a short period of time, his brother that is now fled, going back to Haran, that at this point he feels like he will have the chance to kill his brother and to go ahead and get the revenge of what he felt like his brother had done to him. That would be the most opportune time for him to kill his brother, would be at his father's death. Now, his mother, once again, learns of the plans, and she becomes very fearful for the son that she loved, Jacob. As we said earlier, if we could visualize what these men look like, I put a cartoon up that the only thing I wanted to do is depict the hair of Esau. But I think if we were to depict both of these, I think based on what we read, I think we'd all have to agree. Esau would be probably considered to be the tough brother. Man of the field, probably very muscular, probably, as the words we use today, is probably tough as nails. And we've also categorized Jacob, in a sense, as being more refined, more cultured. So it's obvious at this point that Rebekah had a concern that Esau not only had the desire, but had the ability to certainly kill her son Jacob that she loved so very much. So when she learned of this plan, she immediately sent Jacob away for his protection. She had no idea at this point that she would never see him again. I know there are things that are not written, and it could be that she did see him at some point in time, but the Word of God certainly does not tell us that. Here's the thing too. You got to remember. During that time, if Esau killed Jacob, then the nearest kin of Jacob would be required to kill Esau. That was just the way revenge was handled that time. If someone that was innocent was killed, the family of the person that was killed had the responsibility to go out and kill the one that did the killing. And so that's what she's saying in verse 46. In verse 45. Let me read that again. Until thy brother's anger turn away from thee, and he forget that which thou hast done to me, then I will send and fetch thee from thence. Why should I be deprived also of you both in one day? She's saying, if you hang around here and Esau kills you, then somebody else of Jacob's family, other than of course a brother, is going to have to retaliate and kill my other son Esau. So why should I give up both by not sending him away? And then let me read verse 46. And Rebekah said to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob take a wife of the daughters of Heth, such as these which are the daughters of the land, what good shall my life do me? It's really very apparent that Esau's wives had made life really miserable for Rebekah. And thus, it was important to her that Jacob not find a wife here. And we're going to read, of course, more about that in the coming chapters. Let's talk about the consequences of the deception. First of all, Isaac suffered for his foolish and his rebellious intention of bypassing God. This might be the reason that the Bible virtually closes any further reference to him. Again, as we talked about last week, most of the things we're going to read about moving forward are going to be about, of course, about Jacob. Esau suffered for his lack of respect for the blessings of his birthright. Rebekah suffered for her part in the deception by being deprived of both of her sons. Jacob had to leave home, and Esau was even further estranged from her, again because of the lifestyle that he was living. And then Jacob suffered many years of hardship, deception, and injustice at the hands of Laban. As a keeper of Laban's cattle, his status was that of the lowest slaves known in that day. So isn't it interesting that all four characters that had a part in the deception, that would be the mother, father, and the two sons, all had negative consequences because of the deception. And that's the way we see our lives many times today. If we choose to live our lives in a manner not willing, not pleasing to what God's will would be, then we are putting ourselves in the position to suffer greatly, as opposed to living a godly life and living the way He would have us to live. We don't have to worry about consequences if we live that way. Let's get us a summary of chapter 27. The lesson will be yours tonight. Isaac now knows he was deceived by Jacob, and that he is given the birthright to the wrong person. According to birth, it was not in God's plan. He thought he was giving it to Esau, the son that he loved. Instead, he was giving it to Jacob, the son that Rebekah loved. Esau's mission for living at this point is to kill Jacob, and the perfect time will be when Isaac dies at the burial of the father. That concludes chapter 27. We'll probably finish up a little quicker tonight than we have been, but I don't really want to go into chapter 28. That's when we have the journey of Jacob leaving his mother and father's house and journeying as he has been asked to by his mother for safety. We're going to talk about the ladder, the dream of the angels on the ladder, things that we remember as child in our childhood, and expound on that a little bit more. So thanks again for your attention. Again, I say I appreciate the people that are listening in as you do on a regular basis. And bear in mind, if you don't get to see this at 5 o'clock, that these are recorded. They are on our website at eastmainCofc.org.